There have been plenty of films that I've walked out thinking, wow, that was a mess. The narrative went every which direction, the characters were far too numerous and unfocused, the action was unending and bloated, and the through line was all but indiscernible. And those films hurt because I feel like I can often still see in them an artist's passion for the material and this desire to do something worthy with it. And just for whatever reason, be it an underdeveloped script, a production period that was too rushed, or just an unwillingness to let go of any of their brilliant ideas, it just turned out blah. In films like Steven Spielberg's 1941, or to a lesser extent, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, Mark Webb's The Amazing Spider-Man 2, or Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, fall into that mess category for me. Films that couldn't ever really figure out what they wanted to be, and if they did, how to properly say it. And as such, they just did everything. If those films were looked at as paintings, in each instance we saw a filmmaker given this massive wall-sized canvas, a wall-sized canvas onto which they ambitiously or just foolishly chucked every single color of paint imaginable. This one, and then that one, and then this one, and then that one, until we just ended up with this completely unruly, wild mess. Messes that I personally couldn't bring myself to fully hate, if only because I could tell that they tried, and their actors tried. And for me, seeing that passion and that intention on some level makes it enjoyable and praiseworthy. Now, there are other films that I have walked out thinking, wow, that was empty, that was hollow, that was almost completely devoid of life, color, and any drive of any kind except to get to the end of the runtime as quickly and as painlessly as possible. And no, I wouldn't classify those films as messes, a wall onto which every single color of the rainbow has been splashed, but rather the same sized canvas, sparingly populated with a few well-organized stamps. Orderly marks that were never injected with any personality, passion, or care. And so, just to come out and state it plainly, I found almost all of Justice League to be empty, hollow, and lifeless, to the point that as the end credits started to roll, I had to turn to my friend and just, after a couple of long beats of silence, just stammer, "That wasn't a movie. It was just a collection of stamps." One scene that was followed by another scene that was followed by another scene, none of which were designed to do much more than exposit information as quickly as possible and telegraph who those characters were and what they were doing in this film as expediently as possible. And then we were on to the next scene, which would, like the scene previous and like the scene to follow, do little more than play the idea or concept of that scene. This is that scene where this character tries to convince that character to join his cause, and this is that scene where this character's difficult past is revealed, and this is that scene where that character and that character have that really heartfelt conversation and find common ground. And like I said at the top of the review, it wasn't that those moments were messy or meandering, it was just that they were lifeless. When you remember the trailer playing the exact same moment more effectively, crafting them in the edit in a way that actually drew out some genuine emotion or captured a more interesting tone, you know the finished film is in trouble. And it'd be one thing if the filmmakers were rushing through the dialogue scenes so that they could get on to some really thrilling action sequences. But even those were handled with such lackluster direction and uninvolving stakes. To be fair, there were a couple of moments with Flash that were visually arresting, but even those weren't much more than lesser examples of what Bryan Singer had already done with Quicksilver on his X-Men films. But while on the topic of the Flash and the excellent Ezra Miller, he tried so hard, and were he in the hands of filmmakers that had the time and or desire to actually craft his performance, giving to it some nuance and real motivation, he might have gone from solid to brilliant. As it were, though, he was very quickly confined to acting as little more than the comedic relief, and just as underdeveloped and underutilized as every other member of the Justice League. More unfortunate still for the characters, any time that they approached any sort of earnest sincerity or real drama, the filmmakers would force them to sidestep that emotion with some freshly written Joss Whedon quips. The studio had very obviously come to believe that all we the audience wanted from this film was a light, good time, and therefore anything that deviated from that had to go or be gutted significantly. There was more than one instance where I saw the Snyder version of a scene begin to play out, and play out quite well, only to have it spoiled by some Wheadon line. And I should say right now, I do most of the time genuinely enjoy what I've come to affectionately refer to as Joss Whedonisms. The man does indeed have a very distinct, often peculiar, eternally quirky style of writing and humor, and even though it's stylized and not quote-unquote realistic, it's almost always enjoyable just because it's so uniformly unique. Every time that I recognized that distinctive voice in Justice League, though, I couldn't help but cringe. Not only was it obviously rushed and extremely underbaked, but also so often incongruent with what Zack Snyder was trying to do in his original film. There was something interesting in this film for the character of Batman, for example. This man that found himself on this super team constantly reminded of his own shortcomings, and that maybe the only good he could do for it was bring it together and get out of the way. But all of this was so quickly blasted past, the film just needing to move on to the next character and to the next moment, which inevitably was also underdeveloped. And about a quarter of the way into the film, we got another rather lengthy exposition scene. This instance involving some flashbacks that depicted the mythology of the Mother Boxes and the villain's first attempt to claim them. And in watching that sequence especially, I became even more depressed seeing what this film may have been. Epic, mythological, and certainly distinct from most other superhero films that are out there right now. But as it turned out, that sequence was one of the more visually and tonally incongruent of the entire film, the rest of which just so desperately wanted to be hip and cool and fast and fun and rock and roll. Whether this film would have been better had it remained fully in the hands of director Zack Snyder and screenwriter Terrio, we'll never know. Even so, it was incredibly deflating just watching a shell of a film. An empty, largely pointless exercise that once again failed to present characters that I love in a way that is befitting to their rich history and fascinating personalities. And for all these reasons, I will give the film a 1.5 out of 5. And it guts me to say that because I really wanted this film to be good. I actually liked Ben Affleck as Batman in Batman v Superman, and I've always liked Henry Cavill as Superman, but they were given so little to do in this film, and you could just see them scene after scene caring less and less and disengaging more and more, and it was just really heartbreaking. Nonetheless, guys, I would still love to know what you guys thought of the film, though, so definitely comment below and let me know. And finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.